Good afternoon, everyone. Give you guys a moment to jump in. And for those of you on YouTube, thank you so much for joining me in this archiving moment. It's always good to see you guys here on Every Tech Tuesday. And this is the 141st Bisimoto Tech Tuesday. 141 back-to-back, uninterrupted, all the time. That's a Porsche flat six. It's an M97 engine, which you would see in the newer 911s, for the like 997 911s, you'd see it in some of the Cayman S's. And that's fully built. So what I have on that is a fully sleeved block by Golden Eagle. I have Tron pistons, Bisimoto rods, Bisimoto valve train. Factory camshaft still in that lug right there. I have a deep sump kit, so it holds a lot more oil than factory to allow to put at bay any mishaps with carving or doing crazy stuff on the track. Today, I want to talk about upcycling, whether it's putting an EV in a classic car or a built motor in an older 911. And the purists are not very fond of me because I do really weird things. I am a fan of beautiful old classic cars because we didn't have the pedestrian safety standards we have today. We didn't have all the crazy airbag systems. We didn't have the detachment of the road to the driver that we may have with electrical systems nowadays. And we have an envelope that's very beautiful, so I just appreciate older Porsches and Jaguars and even the Hondas and Bentleys. And Rolls Royces. I love the older cars, but I'm absolutely not a fan of old technology. It's not my cup of tea at all, So that being said, I love to upcycle. I love to do retro mods where you kind of take older vehicles and infuse more technology in it. So it gives me the best of both worlds. The beauty of older car, the connection with the road that you have that's more analog, but also the efficiency of a newer stuff. So you'll see me build old school 911s with a petrol engine that's most likely water cooled, with a 4 valves per cylinder, sleeve, lots of power. So you'll see me combine those two because I want the best of both worlds. I want the power and the efficiency, gas mileage and safety to the environment, while embracing the older classic beauty. And above and beyond that, as you take a look at sustainability and the carbon footprint, it's much nicer, it's much better for the environment to rebuild older cars, to upcycle older cars than to buy a new one or to build a new one. So it's really nice, The biggest bet I've won at the track, well, back in the day, as AJ Thompson, back in the day, on the street races, it was $5,000 US. In racing on the track, officially, via IDRC, it was $25,000 for one day, or one weekend, I'd say. So that's the biggest I've won. Hello, Familia AQR. Greetings, Jared M. Weir. Wow, so much love here today. Car dealer, good seeing you. Oh my God, says Ash XO, good seeing you as well. Miss Seductive Prague, good afternoon. Have you built a Datsun 510 before? Sweezy, not in-house, not myself, but I've tuned a ton for customers. Jose, not too far away from here, but now I work for UPS, did one. We played around a little bit with some stuff with our good friend Cato House, who used to work at Mattel, now with RoboRace. We've had quite a few customers 510s with both, some with SR20 swaps. There's one that was crazy enough to shoehorn in an RB engine, an L series, quite a few. Dr. Arzuni, Dr. Ahmed Arzuni, good seeing you, sir. Hopefully you're staying safe. Hello, Seductive Prague, good afternoon as well. Turbo 10, so much love here. Thank you so much, guys. 911 Page, greetings indeed. Sweet I should build one. Well, the one way I can build cars is if a manufacturer is involved. So, I don't have a relationship with Nissan. So you see a lot of things that I have, like the Porsches I build, we have a relationship with Porsche and some dealerships. We have a relationship with Honda, American Honda, and some dealerships. We have a relationship with Hyundai and some dealerships. So you see a lot of those marquees being built here because they help us offset a lot of the influence costs, and I would say better yet, the R&D costs, and then I can build a wild and a mild, most likely a new and old school. So it makes things much easier, but without a relationship with a manufacturer is very difficult, My first car, as Alex Colson, now you find this interesting. That may be a good question for later on, right? The first car I ever drove was a Peugeot 504. For those of you who are familiar with the Peugeots from France, that's the first car I ever drove. The first car I ever owned, believe it or not, was a Nissan 200 SX. Which is pretty interesting, huh? I'm here talking about upcycling and putting in new technology like that power plant right there, which is 4 valves per cylinder, water-cooled, sequential ignition, sequential injection, has the capability, or call them plug ignition better yet, has the capability of doing a ton of power. That is built easily to make 4 figures, very easily. But we'll probably hover in the 700 to 800 range, and then we'll stop there. And since I'm an advocate of really having clean burning fuels, it will be running on ethanol. So it has a flex fuel sensor on the intake manifold that senses how much ethanol content is in the fuel, allows my ECU to adjust boost, ignition timing, and fueling based upon the content of gasoline versus petrol. Petrol gasoline versus ethanol. But my goal is to run as much ethanol as possible because I want a cleaner burning fuel if it's an internal combustion engine. And of course, I love EVs as well. Yes, Ash, it will be a twin turbo, absolutely. I'm gonna run twin 57mm turbonetics GTX turbines, yeah. I heard about that, Samson is saying, hey, BCG, you hear that Nissan's bringing back the RB? I did, but I have an inkling that that RB is gonna be much more modern. It won't be the exact take on the old school one. If so, that's okay, but I would love to see an RB exist with instead of a cast iron block being more of aluminum with impregnated sleeves in them, or cast iron sleeves in them, make it much lighter, which would be pretty good, you know? Do pre-75 cars, asks Williams, provide a better platform to performance in California due to smog? Yes, it does when you're looking at internal combustion. So prior to that, there's no need for emissions here in California. But you know, some of those cars, especially the older imported cars, are now galvanized, so they're prone to rust, even though California, that's a big deal. But it's a bit of a challenge if you have a chassis that's not as resilient to the elements. But if you plan on going electric, which you're going to see a lot more electric projects coming from here, you don't have to worry about it at all. So it could be a 2020 car that you're converting, it could be an older car, it doesn't matter. Once you go electric, it's completely emissions-free and legal in California, you know? Time for some controversy, says Socially Free Poo. Lancer Evo or Impreza STI? You know what? I am a bit partial to Mitsubishis. I really am, to be honest with you, you know? So that being said, and particularly because of the relationship that we have with Hyundai, and Mitsubishi and Hyundai did a lot of programs together on the engine side, and it's quite supported. I see a lot of STIs coming in with cracked sleeves, oiling issues, and then some challenges with the cam control. So based upon what I've just seen with customers, it may not be a pathway I would take. But hey, it is an opportunity, right? So as a company like ours, it's an opportunity to always find those shortcomings and address them. Like on the M96 engines that are the grandfathers or fathers of the M97, intermediate shaft bearings are something we address, de-chunking of the sleeves is something we address, valve training with the springs brake something we address. So after those things are addressed, the engines are quite potent. You know, so that being said, you know, it's cool. Sweezy saying coil packs, that's really interesting. Mad2JZ, cool name, says, I have a Ford Sierra McCour as a 3.0 V6, old school, 2 valves per cylinder, carburetor. How would you do to modernize it? Well, first, you have quite a few limitations. Carburation, by the way, that's where I hone my teeth in, is it tuning, side off Webers and Mikunis, so I'm big on that. I understand the optimization benefits. And back in the day, it was a huge advantage, but nowadays with the modern injection, it's not a challenge. So the 2 valves per cylinder does limit us in terms of RPM and head flow. And as you can imagine, air flow into an engine is the key to making more power. So the more air you can get in an engine with the same or appropriate amount of fuel introduced as well, the more power you make. So that being said, take care, Mr. Dr. Farah. That being said, it is important to try and upgrade that. So I would actually look at the marquee of the modern engines with that particular make and model and infuse a petrol engine. Or if you're hardcore like me, definitely go EV. The limitations of the 2 valve per cylinder, the valves are very heavy, so it limits RPM capability. The flow is limited. That's why if you take the same, let's say 3.2, 3.3 displacement air-cooled versus a 3.2, 3.3 displacement water-cooled Porsche engine, the Porsche engine makes more power across the RPM band. You have everything with airflow, you have stuff with cam control. There's so many things you can do and still retain the beauty of the older car, you know, which we love, you know? What am I grateful for today, says Far Out EDC. To be honest with you, I'm grateful for all of you. I'm grateful for all of you existing here today and participating in this Tech Tuesday with me, because my very first Tech Tuesday, 140 episodes ago, I had 2 people on here. And now I get hundreds of you interacting all around the world. So I'm very grateful for all of you. I'm also very grateful for what this country has offered me. I came here to the United States with 2 suitcases and nothing else. And I've done okay for myself, even though I'm nowhere near where I want to be. It's allowed a little African boy with 2 suitcases to come here and do well. I love you as well, BK Menace. Thanks for the kind words, you know. Hey, BC, ever plan on going to Mitsubishi Owners Day? Kenny, I'm not even familiar with this, but you know, I have an intern who's all crazy about DSMs. So I'll ask him about that, and maybe I'll come out. You know, I like those engines indeed, you know. Looking at some scary cheap 996, what's the IMS bearing problem itself, says E92 William. Well, here's what it is. In this engine, it's still in this M97 engine. Here, I'll try and simplify this as much as possible. It is a flat six, right? So it has 3 cylinders on one side, 3 cylinders on the other side. It's very flat. And it has camshafts, twin cams on each head. So here's what happens. You have the camshafts directly cogged, right, to an intermediate shaft. And that intermediate shaft is cogged to a crankshaft. So instead of the chains going straight to the crankshaft, there's an intermediate shaft that makes things very nice and level, right in line with the camshafts. And that intermediate shaft goes to the crank. So when the crank turns, it actuates the intermediate shaft, which then actuates the cams on each bank, right? That intermediate shaft obviously has to have a bearing. On one side is the oil pump, which helps with the oil pump. It has a little oil pump housing there, which stays pretty robust. On the other side is a bearing, and that bearing in the earlier models, a very small percentage of them tend to fail. And when I say small percentage, based upon what I've seen, 2, maybe 3% of all engines made, but it's also created a good business model for a lot of companies who like to scare Porsche individuals into upgrading the intermediate shaft. So when it does, you first hear this death rattle because the bearings start giving out, it start rattling a little bit, and then if it goes out of line, of course you lose timing, you could drop a valve, you can contact, all kind of things go wrong, and your engine expires. So there are intermediate shaft bearing solutions where people tend to upgrade them to much better bearings, and it goes away. And by the way, Porsche people really freak out on this. All of us who come, thank you so much for the kind words, Ashley, appreciate that. All the individuals who have made money off of this, they really have made a good business model of scaring Porsche guys to replace it. But us from Sport Compact, we know that if we're boosting a D-Series engine and the sleeve cracks, we don't throw away the engine, we just sleeve the block. If we have a K-Series with a tensioner that goes bad, we just upgrade the tensioners. If we have a Prelude H22 with the hydraulic tensioners up par, we go mechanical. So I come from a world where I'm used to upgrading parts that are challenged with better parts and address the issues and have fun. So when you address the intermediate shaft issue, like upgrade the bearing just for peace of mind, those engines run for hundreds of thousands of miles without problem. You know, now if you start boosting them, of course, I've cracked sleeves by doing anti-lag and going crazy, but you know, it's good. It's good. You can address. So don't be afraid. Matter of fact, if you can find a 996 with an expired engine, we can help you with parts to get it up to speed, and now you have a beautiful car with all the issues addressed, and you can enjoy it and have a good time, you know? iResident says, I just heard the Veloster Turbo and the Veloster have the same engine, no changes, just a turbo. Is that true? Not quite. The standard Veloster turbos are 1.6 liters, and then the Veloster N tend to have 2.0s. The non-turbo, the base 1.6 Veloster versus the turbo Veloster N, they are different in terms of compression, in strategy for fueling, and the ECU, indeed. In the loo, yes, of course, and a pain in the loo indeed, you know. Is tuning and car building a difficult career to be successful in? Tassos, yes and no. So I had this discussion with one of my teammates yesterday and friends. Having your own business is very gratifying, but it's a lot of work. It really is. It's a lot of work, a lot of effort. A lot of people want to get into their own business because they say they want to make their own hours and improve their quality of life. But honestly, if you want to have a lot of time, work for someone else. Because when you have a business that you want to be successful, you work at it. It's like a child, and you have to raise your business properly like a child and pay attention to your business like a child and make sure it's fed the right things and make sure that it's taken care of and so it can yield good for you just like a child. Hello, 2 Wagons, 1 Cup. I love that name, you know? So that being said, if you are interested in having a life in tuning and you don't shy away from hard work, as in myself, I'm here every day. Many times I work 12, 14-hour days every day. I don't take vacation, I don't take time off, I'm constantly hustling, then yes, you can do it, you know? Socially Fresh Free Poo says, apologies for asking, are you an engineer by training? Yes, I am. I'm a chemical engineer, believe it or not. But I took a lot of my electives in mechanical engineering. I took chemical engineering to appease my parents and also do what I love. So since childhood, I've always had affinity for things mechanical, and I love cars from growing. From my first word as a child was car. But my parents own a cosmetics company in West Africa and wanted me to join the family business, as most immigrants tend to do, right? So my goal was to come to America, learn, go back and help the family business. So my mom is this brilliant chemist, and she was just shattered that I cared more about physics than I did about chemistry. So oh, you were excited there, Ash, didn't you? So as a compromise, I said, okay, I will study chemical engineering, which combines the chemical aspect that make my mom happy and also the engineering, which will make me happy. And it ended up being the best things ever. Yeah, it is very Nigerian, isn't it, Emma moves? You know how it is. So it was the best thing that ever happened to me because in chemical engineering, you know the things I do today? Why I just think out the box and I am not afraid of the unknown. Chemical engineering really prepared me for that because there was a class I took that was chemical engineering. I think it was a 301 and 302. So this chemical engineering lab class, it allowed us to, as a group of students, be thrown into an environment with a machine that we knew nothing about, with no instructions, and we're told to find an unknown. And this unknown could be something like the density of a fluid or the flow in a pipe of a fluid, or it had to do with some kind of fluid dynamic attribute of an unknown compound. And then with that, we had to figure out and then present it in front of our class. So guess what? Fast forward to today, I can have a project, a vehicle, doesn't matter what it was, I'm not afraid, I want to learn and do wonderful things, you know? Ash says I'm better than Elon Musk. Thank you, Elon. Thank you, Ash, that's very kind of you. But Elon and I had very many parallels like this. Elon also went to school very young. I was in university at the age of 16. I'm from West Africa. Elon, believe it or not, is from South Africa. So he came to the United States like I did. The difference is when he graduated from school, he started his business. I think it was PayX, which ended up being PayPal. And then I went and worked for a pharmaceutical company. So I didn't start a business. I listened to my Nigerian parents, and I had to look for a very good job. So I went to Hertz Marion Russell, which was a German-based company in pharmaceuticals, did a pharmaceutical research thing, and then sales. So while Elon was creating a business and suffering and hustling and coding, I was working for the man. So that's the difference between I and Elon. And he's done wonderful things. As a matter of fact, I have him to credit for a lot of things that I'm doing recently because he's really been a very good, positive influence on me. So it's good. And we're peers pretty much, which is pretty interesting as well. Matt 2JZ from South Africa. Yes, I see that. I appreciate you joining. I think you're a good 8 hours ahead, you know. Raul Escobar Elias Papalucho says, I'm great. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. The man says, Ima moves. Thank you so much. My first car, HLR, that must be the question of the day because I answered that earlier on. First car I drove, Peugeot 504. First car I ever owned was a Nissan 200SX. Then, Puhare is asking, is it possible to make an EV that without overheating issues, I mean, for track use or drifting? Love you, BC. Yes. Not only is it possible, it's been done. There are quite a few. There's a whole series. There's a whole Formula E, Formula Racing series that focuses on electric cars only. And then you can track so many different cars. Even the most recent, we had a Porsche Taycan Turbo here. You can track that without qualm. We had a I-Pace. You can track that without qualm. Drifting, there are a few drift EV cars, and you can see more and more of that. So yeah, it is possible. It is very, very possible, you know? What do you think of the K24 engine for our motor? I think it's a very, very potent power plant. So, especially the old K24As from the TSX, those lend themselves very well to natural aspirated performance. The newer K24Z, what is Z3 or Z7, flows more in the intake, so that's great potential, but the exhaust is very restricting because it has that single out port to help with emissions and lighting off the catalyst. So those will lend themselves much better to turbocharging. Do you tune CVTs? Not on my dyno. My dyno doesn't have the capability of absorbing variable gear ratios. It has to have a fixed gear ratio throughout the sweep. But what I do have are canned flashes for a lot of CVTs. So if you just want a cool canned flash where it can flash and make more power, that's great. But if you need a custom tune on the dynamometer, my dyno doesn't have the capability of doing that, unfortunately. You know? Does that gray Porsche from your feed have an Instagram page? No, it does not. It's our own, but no, it doesn't have a dedicated Instagram page at all. Any recommendations for a first car for someone who's looking to learn to start tinkering? Yes, there's one good car that's great. And you may be surprised by this because it's fairly cost effective and has a lot of aftermarket support. You ready? The Acura RSX. The Acura RSX, which is amazing. So, it is a very cost-effective Type S. You can find those for $4 grand. It has a K-series motor, it's a K20. The K20 engine has a lot of aftermarket support, whether you want standalone or flashing, whatever you want. And the engine has a lot of potential, whether you're natural aspirated, boosted, there's supercharger kits, it's a good one. If I started today, that will be the car I'll start with. Why do EVs have low top speed? Is it due to no gears? Low top speed? Oh, I think you mean the maximum speed. Gearing has a very big role in that. But check this out. I mean, the highest I got my petrol 930, you know, the blue one, this one, the highest speed I got that was 135. So on my 935, mechanically, the highest speed I can go is 165. And if I want to go higher than that, I either change my final drive and or my tire size. So it can be done, but it's a matter of gearing. And it's just a compromise, like anything in engineering, right? It's the compromise in that off-the-line torque, because if you reduce the numerical ratio to get that top speed, your out-the-hole torque becomes lower. Now you could solve that with a gearbox if you're so inclined, but that gearbox better be quite robust if you're going to use some of that Bisimoto power, eh? What do you think about a Toyota car? Which one, sir? There's so many Toyota models, you know? Do you have any Porsches? My dad has a 2017 turbos in a special Algorithm grade. Do I have any Porsches? Yeah, we have quite a few, sir. A lot of, this place is full of Porsches, but yes, we do. Thanks for asking, you know? Corvette said an EV 2002 would be pretty sick, especially if you focus on keeping it really light. Amen, that would be so much fun, wouldn't it? Imagine Corvette, imagine a small drive unit, right? Let's say like the Model 3 one, or better yet, because the Model 3 drive units are still a pretty penny now, because they're fairly, some of the cars are barely getting crashed, but right here, I have some drive units that are from like the Model X, small drive unit, let's say that in the rear. That would make a good, wow, almost 400 horsepower, right? 380 thereabout. That would be a lot of fun in that thing. Use some nice LG Chem batteries. That'd be nice. It'd be nice indeed. Land Cruiser, you asked me that before. Actually, which model? Toyota in general I like because they really have down-packed the massive production of, how should I say, mass production of vehicles. They have a very good system in being able to mass produce very efficiently and very well. I like the quality of the cars. I participated in quite a few demos about what they have in their future for autonomous driving, which is pretty forward-thinking. I'm gonna go to CES, so I like the brand. What are you experiencing with Ram air intakes or NA engines, especially at highway speeds? Tons. I'll tell you how crazy I am, E92 William, about Ram air. On all of my natural aspirated setups, I build these air boxes and actually put pressure sensors in them. And I monitor the pressure sensors indeed. And would you believe that I have had the opportunity, and I'm not even supposed to share this, but I am, within a quarter mile at full throttle, I can build almost a pound of boost, you know? Corvolt says it sucks because ChatMO is super easy, you're right, and it uses you know, the CCS uses a different protocol to communicate, so it's much more challenging. There's a lot of communication going from the vehicle to the station, but via CAN, CCS is so easy. But you know what? I welcome the challenge, and you know, I guess a lot of manufacturers complain about having multiple ports on a car. As I build pretty cool Porsches and 935s, guess what? I love having, even the old school 935s had multiple entry levels for fuel and liquid and all this other, and water. So I can put, even right now I'm putting a ChatMO in my 935 and I'm putting another hole in the hood. It looks still the part of a proper 935, but I get it. If you're trying to save costs and not trying to put many apertures on a car, CCS would be the easier way to go, because you can have the J1772 on the top and the 2 ports on the bottom for the direct DC charging, which is pretty cool. How can you get good car sounds from an EV? Well, what I did was I just pumped a natural sound into my compartment. So where I sit in my own electric vehicle versus the engine compartment is just no barring whatsoever. It's just a free-flowing aperture, so I hear the mechanical noise. I even have an attenuation device, so if it gets too much for the occupant, they can attenuate it. And I may make that a little bit more remotely controlled. That'd be pretty cool, right? Now, what manufacturers have done, what I've noticed with both Porsche and Jaguar, with the cars we tested in the past 2 weeks, is that they're starting to put artificial sound. So Jaguar uses more of a, it's kind of weird, I kind of don't like it. They use more artificial petrol sound, a petrol or internal combustion engine sound. It has a whoop. So what you could do is, I hate to say ChatMO, like Beetlejuice. Anyway, if you go on my YouTube channel and you take a look at the, you know, if you haven't subscribed, please do. It's a pretty cool channel. You go there and take a look, you'll notice that the Jaguar, you can hear it sounds like a gasoline engine in there when you floor it, boop, and you can turn it off. On the Porsche Taycan, however, it's more like an amplification of the natural sound. So it has this amplification, but a little more Jetson-y. They add a little more, like a little Jetson sound to it, which is pretty interesting, you know? What compression ratios do you like to run on NA or all motor setups? put it this way. I'll give you my own experience, completely transparent here. My D16, D15 engines that were record-breaking, 18.4 to 1 static. On my current F22A, 17 to 1. So I'm a big advocate of taking advantage of high compression till we get to that point of diminishing returns, and the tuning window gets too narrow, and that's it. Looking forward to getting your hands on the new Veloster N DCT. Absolutely, Kegger VN. You see that little Veloster N right there with a little cargo box? Yes, yes, yes. Big fan from Nigeria. What you got into cars? What got you into cars? Says Jayo Bande. I've loved cars since childhood. My first word was car. I've always loved cars and studied engineering and had some influence by the people I used to work with at a Circuit City, which was a local electronics store, no longer in business now. And started racing, started a street, went to the track, got picked up by American Honda, and the rest is history, you know? Street Kanja said, we just got Trom pistons, rods, upgraded wrist pins, and coated pistons. Great. I mean, tell you, Trom is, that's the way, I use Trom in my Porsches, and my Hondas, my Hyundais. I love those guys, you know? My 2JZ blue cams from a single turbo 2 times. What should I replace to hold extra pressure from turbo? It depends. Is it a tuning challenge? Is it a parts component challenge? That could be a Tech Tuesday in itself. And unfortunately, we're out of time. So, Fuzzy, join me next week. Let's talk about your project. Educate me on what you did, and maybe it can point you in the right direction. But nonetheless, guys, even though we look very happy here and things are great, I need you all to stay safe because I need you out there doing great things. Please protect yourself. This COVID is out of control. I lost a good friend last week, who was my best friend as a child growing up. Kelechi Nwebele, rest in peace. It's no joke, guys. It's real. I'm losing people I know. Kelechi and I were born the same day, minutes from each other, and he's now dead, just like that, last week Monday. So may his soul rest in peace. Please be safe, everyone. Take care of yourselves. I look forward to seeing you next week on the 142nd episode. I know. Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate that. But stay safe, enjoy yourself, and I will see you soon.